Thank you, Frank, for joining us on this first episode of Frankly Speaking, where we get to learn a little bit more about what's going on at EWEB and what's going on inside your mind as general manager.
Well, that's always dangerous, trying to figure out what's going on inside my mind.
You're here to filter it out for us.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It was, something that came up. I know we've talked about doing this for a while. Getting a chance to talk about things that are going on across the utility, I think is helpful for everybody. We don't always get the chance to have hallway conversations as much as we used to, and so this is, in some ways, a hallway conversation between you and I that everybody gets to listen into and hopefully ask questions about, and hopefully be talking about the relevant issues of the day. So. Appreciate that. I appreciate people listening in and trying to understand what's going on, and so looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, to kick things off, what happened during this most recent board meetings? What are some highlights that you want to bring out for folks at the utility?
Well, first of all, I don't know that everybody in the utility understands that we are governed by a publicly elected board. We have 5 commissioners. They are representative of the public, and as the general manager, I report into this board. I have 5 bosses representing some 200,000 people, and on a monthly basis, we go to our board and get their guidance. We have certain approval levels that they need to certain aspects of our purchasing and procurement that rises to their level of approval. And so we have a number of different things that we talk to the board about, and thus they are public, so we in many ways are talking to the public as well. Probably some of the most recent important issues have been around projected rate forecasts going forward. We have these 2 really important essential services. It touches really everybody in our community, electricity and drinking water. And our original projections back in July showed some pretty significant rate increases going into this next year, 15% on the electric side and 9% on the water side. And we recognize the impact that has on our community, and yet we know the reasons for those increases as well. So we did a lot of work with managers and staff over the last few months to try to mitigate those levels of rate increase. We made some progress bringing the 15% down to 11%, and just roughly for every percent, that's taking out about $2 million. So if you take out 4%, that's $8 million that you're pulling out of the electric budget. And then on the water side, we pulled out 1%. And those were the 2025 sort of revenue requirement forecasts that we had.
Well, in trimming those rate increases required effort from folks across the utility as different managers dug into the budget and tried to figure out how to cut expenses. Can you talk a little bit about some of the efforts that folks went to get those rate increases down?
Yeah, there's a number of different things. So first of all, a lot of thanks to staff and the managers looking at every opportunity they could, whether that's the timing of openings, for example, when and where you're going to hire resources, how you're going to stage your projects is an important part of the criteria. Looking at the risks that creates. We have a lot of assets that we use to deliver electricity and water. Many of those are aging. The longer we wait, the more expensive they become from a maintenance perspective, and also the replacement costs in this kind of environment are going up. Inflation has hit our industry harder than it has just normal consumer products. And so really looking at timing of projects, what we're going to be doing, what resources we're going to be needing human-wise as well as financial-wise, and really trying to prioritize.
So we've been talking about the budget and the rates for next year for the short term, but you're also working with the board on a long-term rate plan and rate design effort. Right. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, rate design is one of the things that we've looked at as really strategically important for our organization. And the premise of rate design and taking a look at it is that We do have a certain amount of money that we need to operate, maintain our assets, replace our assets, do the work that we need to do. Actually, how we recover that from customers is rate design. And we want to be able to inspire customers to consume electricity specifically in the near term, but also water in the long term, in a way that is beneficial to the community. And an example of that is just simply the time of which you use electricity. If you're using electricity at peak times, which is when everybody comes home from work, 6 o'clock in the evening to 8 o'clock in the evening, not only is the electricity more expensive for us to procure, it's also dirtier, it has a higher carbon content, as opposed to, say, midnight or in the middle of the afternoon in the summer when solar in California is producing more. So being able to create rates that reward people for using it when it's less expensive, and then sharing some of that benefit with them directly for doing that, and then also for our community sharing that, that's part of rate design. And we're going to look at a lot of different aspects of that over the next several years. It's something that every single customer is interested in, because the rates that they pay is something that's really personal to, but not just residential customers, but businesses as well.
Yeah. Well, going back to the short term of the budget and the rates for next year, one thing that the board did was to separate out the cost of the Bonneville Power Administration energy supply pass-through from the rate increase that EWEB is doing. But we're also working on a new contract with BPA. Right. Can you talk a little bit more about what's the status there and how's that effort progressing?
Yeah, the Bonneville contract that we have now expires in 2028, and as part of their planning process and being able to be prepared for the new contracts, all of their existing customers, which is basically utilities like EWEB, they want to have a new contract signed by roughly the end of 2025. And so between now and roughly June of 2025, we're going to have to decide which Bonneville types of services that we actually think will fit best with our portfolio. We have our own generating resources as well, and so we want to have a mix between Bonneville and EWEB resources that adds the most value over the longest period of time. These contracts are typically 15 to 20 years. I think this one's scheduled for 17 years. And so we're going to be doing a lot of analysis, be looking at the pros and cons of different Bonneville products, some of which puts a little more emphasis on Bonneville to, say, balance the system. In other cases, it puts more emphasis on EWEB and what we're doing in how the system is balancing and how we're procuring resources.
And the board will learn some more about the latest results from this effort on October 15th.
Yeah, we have a work session with the board on October 15th to talk about the various Bonneville options from a qualitative perspective. It's a little bit different than when you get away from the numbers. You want to really look at these options, which ones give us the most flexibility to do different things, which ones maybe the most resilient, which one has the most risk from a price and cost perspective. If we take that on, then we bear some of that risk. If Bonneville takes it on, that risk goes to Bonneville, but that's still a risk. And so looking at the qualitative pieces is what we're going to talk to the board about in October. And even relative to slightly expanding that, our own approach to generation, for example, how do those qualitative assessments apply to our own sort of business structure? So we'll talk to them, and we're not going to ask for a vote. It's a work session, but just to get their opinions to help guide us going forward.
Yeah. Well, this is Public Power Week right now. We are a publicly owned utility. Public Power Week is important to us, but maybe you can tell us what is one thing that makes you really proud to lead a publicly owned utility, lead EWEB.
Well, the first thing that always comes to mind is people. Not only are we a public utility from a structural perspective, we have a publicly elected board, but also the type of people that work at EWEB generally have a real strong sense of community, and that shows in how we interact with each other, the jobs that we do, when we go out in the public, the type of work we do, just has a different feel to it. We're not really doing things for shareholders and dividends and for people to make money off of us. We do this because it's part of our career, which is important, but it's also we are members typically of our communities, and we have a real strong sense that that's important to the people who work here. So it does come back to people, both the community side and then also the employee side.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people and employees, we want to have a regular feature on this show where we highlight an employee or a group of employees who've done some amazing work in the last month. So if you were to offer some kudos to one group or one individual, who'd that be for this one?
Well, you're putting me on the spot, pulling out one group. I really, the interesting and rewarding part of what I get to do is I get to see a lot of great work across the utility. I would say that we've had one group that has really had some significant challenges the last 6 months or so, and that's the group that's been associated with the meter access refusal customers. And these are customers who basically refused a smart meter. They took it to a pretty extreme level. They filed a lawsuit against EWEB. We had to really manage our way through this process, trying to be respectful of the customer and the fact that they don't agree necessarily with our decisions, but also that we're making decisions for the community at large and not just individual customers. And this group within EWEB that had to manage this didn't always agree with everything that we were doing, but have to give them a lot of credit for being professional, being respectful, communicating really well with customers in some really difficult circumstances, and really just wanted to thank that group for their organizational efforts, the fact, again, that they represented our organization incredibly well under some difficult circumstances. So in this case, the first one goes to the meter access refusal group, and over time, I'll probably end up having to recognize every single group across the utility because there is a lot of great work going on.
Yeah, thank you. Well, anything else you want to add for this first episode, Frankly Speaking?
Well, I just hope that people appreciate the fact that our organization has a lot of moving parts. This is an opportunity to understand different aspects. I think we will probably touch on a lot of the things that we're looking at strategically from a board perspective. Again, the hallway conversation, and if people have ideas on certain topics that they'd like to hear about, no questions really off the table. So we'll see what we can do going forward, but really appreciate the opportunity to have people listen in.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, Frank.
Yep. Thank you. Have a great day.